All right, so knowing that, we're going to think about how this affects the way agencies provide that information to the president, right? The president needs the bureaucracy to provide that information to be able to make good decisions, okay? But the heads of agencies don't have as their only consideration, right? Can I give the president the best information available? Right? Remember, their job is to create the appearance of success. And so you might have incentives when running an agency to paint a particular picture with the information you decide to pass along to the president. You certainly want to paint a picture that your agency is being successful, right? If you want to appear successful, providing information that reinforces the idea that your agency is being successful is going to be a priority. But that's going to mean downplaying some kinds of information that might be less favorable to your agency's position. And it's going to be, there's some variation in how easy it is for that to do, or for you to do that, right? So it depends on, for example, how hard the information is that you're providing to verify. So if what you're doing affects a large number of people all across the country, right? So let's say you're running Social Security Administration, right? If a lot of people are not getting their payments, right? Something is screwed up in the agency, and people who are supposed to be getting their Social Security benefits are not getting their Social Security benefits. There's no way for you to hide that, right? You have a lot of very vocal people out there who are reaching out, not just to you, but to their members of Congress, maybe even reaching out to the White House directly, saying, hey, how come I'm not getting my Social Security benefits, right? There's no way for you to contain that information. But let's say you're running the CIA, right? You have an intelligence operation. You're trying to gather information on what's happening inside another country. Somebody screws up, blows the whole operation, right? Well, that's not immediately visible to everybody outside the CIA, right? You don't have, there are ways for you to contain that information. There are ways for you to keep that in-house and not spread that beyond and not create the appearance that you're not being successful in the way that you're doing that job, right? But the fact that you didn't get information that would have been important might be a relevant consideration for the president, right? To say, well, we were trying to verify this information in this way. We weren't able to get the information to find out whether what we already thought we knew was accurate or not. That's something you'd want to weigh as president, right? But if the CIA doesn't tell you that because it makes them look bad, you assume that the information that we already had must be valid, and you act on that, that could be a problem. All right, it also matters in terms of how they're presenting you with information, who the agency head sees as the sponsor, right? So if the president is perceived as the sponsor, okay, you're an agency head, you've managed to get the president to be your main constituent, okay? You have an incentive as the head of that agency to keep the president happy. And it puts you in a kind of delicate position because you want to paint a rosy picture. You want to give the president information that shows that you're doing a good job and the president should continue to support you. But on the other hand, if the president comes to believe that you are not providing accurate information, what's going to happen to your relationship with your key constituent, with your sponsorship, right? It's going down, right? That's it. You are losing your constituent, right? So you certainly still have that incentive to be painting a rosy picture, but you have a lot less leeway around what you tell the president, what you don't tell the president, because again, if that information gets to the president around you in some way, if you lose control of that information and the president realizes that you're hiding things, then you've lost your constituent and you're out of luck, right? You're probably out of a job, your agency might be become a very low priority for the president. There's all sorts of problems that come about as a result of that, okay? It also means, as you're looking at this, maybe there's a distinction between information about the external world and information about the internal workings of your agency, right? You certainly want to be as accurate as you can with information about what's happening outside of your agency, because that's the stuff that it would be much easier for presidents to verify or get from a different source, right? Information about what's happening internally in your agency, you have a little bit more control over. You might have some more leeway to paint that rosier picture. All right, if your major constituency is Congress, your sponsor is Congress, you may find yourself directly in conflict with the president at times. Right? Especially if there's divided government. The majority in Congress wants your agency to do one thing, the president wants your agency to do something else. Okay. Now you got a problem that things that you do to make your constituent happy could make your boss unhappy, right? And vice versa. And so that may certainly color the way that you inform the president, what you believe the president, or you believe you should tell the president, what you believe you should not tell the president, and importantly, what you tell members of Congress and what you don't tell members of Congress, right? So the biggest danger for a president when somebody's constituency is Congress is that information will be leaked to Congress to improve Congress's bargaining position in conflicts with the president. Right? Let members of Congress know more of what's happening inside the executive branch that might put the administration at a disadvantage, especially if that same information isn't provided in as complete a fashion to the president. So if the president's walking in not knowing something important, members of Congress who are negotiating with the president do know those important things, the president's at a disadvantage. Of course, you got to be sneaky about it if you're going to pursue that strategy, because if the president realizes that's what you're doing, again, you're going to get fired. Okay? You're going to be out. If your major constituency is interest groups, again, it's very similar to Congress, although the risks of being seen to be duplicitous are much higher because those interest groups are in a much worse position to help you or support you if the president's mad at you. Your agency is not really going to get support from interest groups if the president's unhappy, right? Congress can still fund it. Congress can still do things to support. Interest groups can't, okay? But again, you want to paint that rosier picture. You want to paint a picture that is consistent with the goals of that interest group, okay? But again, the danger here, just like with Congress, is that information is leaked to the interest group to help improve the interest group's bargaining position with Congress or with the president in ways that the president would not want. All right. Questions about how this all affects the way presidents get information? All right. And then if we think about how this affects implementing the president's programs, so what this does is it introduces another task for the president, right? It's not just about making decisions about policy. It's not just about getting Congress to pass legislation that's necessary to get those policies enacted, right? You now have to worry about what's going to happen after the fact, right? What's going to happen in the bureaucracy once that bill is passed and signed? What's going to happen in the bureaucracy after you sign that executive order telling the bureaucracy what to do? And Wilson sees a trade-off between two aspects of the job then, okay? Kind of the aspect of putting together a political coalition that can help you to get a policy passed versus putting together the expertise to monitor what's happening inside the bureaucracy and know where potential problems are inside the bureaucracy to make sure that it's going to be implemented. Right? As we've talked about already, presidents face real limits on their time. And so he basically argues that if a president, as most presidents do, put most of their time and effort into the political side of the equation, right? They're negotiating with members of Congress. They are trying to go out and persuade the public to support the policy and put pressure on Congress, right? They are more likely to get a policy enacted into law that they want, but they're not in a good position to kind of monitor what happens after that. And they're often going to be surprised by what the actual implementation of that bill is going to look like, okay? Presidents who focus too much on developing expertise on what's happening inside the bureaucracy and monitoring what's happening inside the bureaucracy might be in a really good position to take a bill that's been passed into a law and implement it in the way that they want, but they may not have put the time and effort into getting the bill passed in the first place, so it doesn't matter. Okay. So you've got the before and the after of the policy. If you put too much time into the before aspect of trying to get the policy enacted, again, it's good for getting the bill passed into law. It's bad for having that law turn out the way that you wanted it to. If you put too much time in the after, well, those that get through, you might be in a better position to have turned into actual actions that you were predicting and you were hoping for, but it's harder to get to that point where that bill is passed into a law and it becomes action in the first place. All right, so there are a number of problems then that presidents have to think about and deal with when thinking about controlling the bureaucracy, okay? So first of all, the way we think of the president controlling the bureaucracy is through the appointment process, right? Presidents get to pick the heads of major agencies. Presidents in large agencies get to pick not only the head of that agency, but multiple layers at the top of leadership. So not just, for example, the Secretary of State, but deputy secretaries of state, not just the Secretary of Defense, but the heads of the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, etc. You've got a lot of jobs that the president can fill with people, ideally, who are going to support the president's agenda, who are going to want to enact the policies that the president wants to see enacted, right? Who should be there as, people carrying out the president's will. The problem is that presidents appoint thousands of people. So a newly elected president has about 5,000 jobs to fill. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't even know 5,000 people, much less 5,000 people that I would specifically want in these particular jobs. I mean, lots of people I know that I would never want to appoint to any job ever, right? So what happens? Well, presidents are going to play a role in making some of those selections. And we'll think about that in a moment, right? But just realistically, even if you, from the time you announced your candidacy until the time you were inaugurated, right, spent all of your time reviewing candidates for all of these jobs, you still would not really be able to interview 5,000 or people for 5,000 jobs and make those decisions, right? And of course, if you did spend all your time during the campaign doing that, well, then you wouldn't be elected president anyway because you didn't leave yourself any time to campaign, right? So realistically, you're not even going to start that process in any sort of large-scale way until after the election's over, right? After you have won the election. And so that gives you a little over 2 months to start figuring out how to fill these 5,000 vacancies, right? So there's absolutely no way you're going to even read resumes for all 5,000 jobs, much less interview candidates for all 5,000 jobs, right? Most presidents are going to, at most, be directly involved in a couple of dozen of those positions, right? Picking people for a couple of dozen positions that they think are important. And then what's gonna happen? They're gonna get a list, right? They're gonna put together a committee. That transition committee is going to review resumes, they're gonna talk to candidates, and they're gonna come up with a list, right? And even they are not gonna come up with a list of 5,000 people right at the start of the administration. Some of these are gonna take months afterwards before they get filled, right? But even with that added time, once you're inaugurated, you're spending your time as president doing all sorts of other things. You can't spend all day interviewing candidates and reviewing resumes for all of these positions, right? So you're still gonna rely largely on other people to come up with a list for you. And when it comes to the candidates, it's not gonna be just, the people that you would solicit if your only goal was to put the best people in each position that would, have the expertise, that would have the experience for that job. Because you have a lot of people you need to reward, right? People who supported your campaign, your campaign manager is expecting to get a job in the administration, right? People who supported your election, did so thinking that they were going to get some job out of doing this, right? And so you're going to have a lot of people that you want to reward because they helped you get elected. And generally, you really do want to reward them, right? Hey, this is a big deal. They helped you get elected president. You want to give them something in return, and a job is something that you can do. But the fact that they were had great expertise in helping you to get elected doesn't mean they have expertise in running any part of the government. Then there are going to be people that you basically traded favors with to help get their support, right? So you may have losing candidates in the primaries that you basically promised key positions in the executive branch in exchange for their endorsing you rather than endorsing one of your other rivals. Right now you got to find a place for this person. Okay? You've got people that are being put forward by other constituencies that you have, right? So interest groups, members of Congress that supported you, that have people they want to find jobs for, right? And you've always got people who were either in previous administrations or who just lost their job in Congress in the election or who lost a gubernatorial race, who are looking for positions. Members of your party who just lost election and are looking for another place to land that you want to help find places for. So what happens is you end up appointing a lot of people without even knowing the people you're appointing. And you end up appointing a lot of people you do know who are people that you're picking for reasons other than because you thought this is absolutely the best person for this job. Okay? And so that person that you pick may not actually really agree with you on the specific issues that agency deals with. May not have any expertise on the specific issues that agency deals with. And so they may not be the people who are in the best position to actually implement your policies because they either might not like them and be dragging their feet even though you appointed them, or they may be all in favor of it but have no idea what needs to be done to help your policies actually get implemented successfully. All right, let me pause for a second.